Riemann test and many other tests, which generally gives misleading result if there is a structural break on the data. So then there is a new issue. And then to bypass that issue, another model appears, which is called autoregressive distributed lag bound testing approach of co-integration, developed by the two people called Poseidon and Poseidon. And the beauty of this model is that in this model, you don't have to check the stationary, non-stationarity or stationarity issue. You can check a mixture of variables and you can test for the co-integration. So that was again a kind of popular model in the horizon of around 2002 to 2005. But then another debate arose. And that debate was a very relevant debate in practical or in commonsensical perspective. Is the issue related to the structural data, which is very common in any, be it financial data or any data. The structural break is a major issue. And it has been shown that, it can be proven in the analytical result, that if you ignore the structural break issue and apply those conventional methodology, now we can say those are conventional methodology, earlier it was not that, like our Johnson-Euclideas or ARDL or our Angel procedure, without considering the structural break issue, it may give a misleading result. So again, a new development took place in the co-integration methodology, and the two models appear we call the threshold co-integration, which can take care of the structural break issue endogenously. And again, the two people which we should name is called Gregory Hansen, that is they developed one kind of model, and Hatemichi. He also developed another kind of model which takes care into the structural break issue. Meanwhile, the ARDL model which we have discussed earlier, the bound testing approach of ARDL, it also get a facelift in very recent year in 2011, where a new model came which takes care of the asymmetry issue, the positive and the negative shocks. Can we segregate them and can we put it in a co-integration frame? So that model is basically told a nonlinear asymmetric ARDL model, and it has been developed by 3% called Singh, Yu and Greenwood Limu in 2011. So that is one thrust area in an academic perspective, and always there is a lead-lag relationship between the academics and the industry. Some model academics are going very fast. In some model, like the retail models and all these things, which basically the industry leaders. And then it gradually come back to the academics. High frequency data. The model of course generated by some of the statisticians or some of the economists or econometric person. But its application is generally starts in the academics. Then maybe when I modify the course, I may ask all of that, please come and take 2-3 sessions on this high frequency data, because they have the server, they have the software, and they have the used data generation process, which is difficult to manage, as Kakuri said, in an academic environment. So there is a lead-lag relationship always happen in the academics and the industry. The other thrust area in my area is, of course, is the multivariate GARCH analysis. GARCH is basically a model which is basically taking care of the time varying volatility. And this is a very common phenomenon in a high frequency data, irrespective of whether it is a financial data or in a time system. The GARCH is a major component. Initial development was univariate GARCH. Now there is a multivariate GARCH model which has been appearing, and it looks very promising. The other areas are the nonlinear Granger's causality, which basically detect that which is causing what. Threshold panel co-integration. When you use a large, say for example, world level data, what is happening? Say for example, energy and GDP. How influencing energy and GDP each other. And this is generally taken into consideration under panel co-integration framework. And again, the panel co-integration has developed, and the recent trend is the threshold panel co-integration. And finally, it's a very recent paper I saw only yesterday. So that paper actually, this came as a working paper. It's called regime switching co-integration, which is again, regime switching is again an inherent property of a time series data. Now the Markov regime switching model, now they are incorporating in a co-integration framework, and the model which is appearing is called regime switching co-integration. So these are some of the development which I know which is happening in my case. And as I told that there are many more things which I don't know because it's a very vast area. And now I think I may request the student to present the 5 analytical case based on modeling and forecasting of energy and financial market. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, sir. Now may I request, before we start with our presentations, Ma'am Anjali Chandra to please chair the session and present your view on analytics.
Very good morning, friends. At the outset, I would like to thank MBI for inviting me here to be a part of this workshop. And I'm very honored to be here among industry stalwarts from power sector like Mr. R.P. Singh and Mr. Soni and Mr. Rajesh Bansal. I know a few faces here. I'm from the power sector, so I talk about power sector analytics. I don't know much about financial markets, but since I'm from the Delhi Electricity Regulatory Commission, I would like to say that, electricity, when you are in the electricity industry, power procurement is 80% or 85% of the total cost of the electricity industry, or for a consumer, 85% is the power procurement cost, and rest of the costs are only 15%, 10 to 15%. In the tariff. So if you are able to forecast well, you can economize only 85%. You should and you must concentrate on power forecasting because they are 85% of your costs. And with the help of this forecast, if your analytics is good, you are able to tie up power procurement in terms of long-term PPAs, in terms of short-term bilateral contracts, and procure power on day-ahead, on the power exchanges, or on the day-ahead markets where you can procure power. So your entire power procurement strategy would be based on the energy and demand forecast which you make. In Delhi, we have a very peculiar situation. We have, as you must be seeing today's newspaper, the CM has invited DISCOMs to arrange for 6,000 megawatt of power. And we in the last year had a peak demand of around 5,600 megawatt. And we have a peculiar situation in that our peak demand and off-peak demand are varying in a band of around 5,600 and 1,300 megawatt. And it's very difficult to do power procurement for such a scenario because if we buy round-the-clock power to meet the reliability of power to a consumer, then we have to sell power at low rates in off-peak. We procure at 5 rupees or 5.5 rupees and we sell at 3 rupees. The market scenario is such that we are selling at 3 and procuring at 5.5. So the Delhi consumer has to pay not only for the cost of power he is consuming, but also the cost of power which is being sold at a lower rate to other outside Delhi. So we are able to forecast well, we are able to do our data analytics well. Maybe we will not have to procure round-the-clock power. And in the current scenario, our requirement is 25,000 million units, and we are selling a surplus of 23,000 million units. 25,000 million unit is our requirement, and we are bearing a loss of 2 rupees per unit on these 23,000 million units. So, that is why I say that for us in power sector, it is very important to have a very fine energy forecasting. Like energy forecasting and demand forecasting in the power sector, if we look in the Delhi scenario, then it should take into account the type of load we have. We have mostly domestic. Our consumption is 50% is domestic, and mostly it is AC load, which has a peak which comes for a peak at the night around 12 o'clock. You can well imagine what is the situation of Delhi. And when we do forecasting, then we have to take into account the time of date tariff which we have put in place. So it's very difficult to predict. I do not know how MBI will factor that into the forecasting procedure. But we have said we have put in place a TOD tariff for industrial consumers and commercial consumers who are 300 kilowatt and above. And next year, in the coming tariff, we are going to reduce it to 100 kilowatt and above. And in future, it may come down to domestic consumers also. So, we have seen that peak demand is growing at a rate of 70 to 80%, whereas energy demand is only growing at 35%. So that also has to be factored into the load forecast which we are making. And I saw a presentation which said that the model being used by MDI is much better or will give better results than the CA model. Since I am from CA, I would just like to say that CA is using time series and partial end use method. They find out what are the developments taking place in each state. They have forms for getting what is happening in each state, how much of housing complexes are coming up, how much of industry is coming up. But if we can get a better model than that would be nice for us. And the load forecasting should definitely take into account the regulatory policies. They are announced from year to year. So I do not know how that is taken into account. For example, open access, how many consumers will go in open access? So to factor that into the load forecast model may be difficult because we have been hearing of open access for past so many years, and that 1 megawatt is going to, consumers above 1 megawatt are going to get open access in the future. But how many states have operationalized that, and when it is going to get operationalized is very difficult to predict and put into an energy forecast model. Though as regulators we try to take care of that by imposing additional surcharge for stranded assets. But Delhi is going to be the first state which is going to come up with additional surcharge for this taking care of the stranded assets. But it would be better if this open access, how many consumers are going to go and what load is going to go out of the state when open access is operationalized, that can also be predicted in a forecasting model. And I think that if, as I said in the beginning, the load forecast is the basis on which we do all power procurements and all our planning for the system as what should be the system. Because there is a timeline between creating a system. You cannot create the system in a short time. You have to have a timeline of 1 year or 1.5 years to put in a transmission and distribution system to meet the demand. So all our planning also depends on the load forecast. So we would be very happy if MBI is able to bring out a model which helps us in our exercise.
We begin with our presentations. Our first presentation for the day is by our student group 1. It's on the topic time series modeling and forecasting of peak electricity demand for the state of Delhi. A little bit about the topic. Electricity demand forecasting is very important for a country like India, which suffers from severe power shortages and regional imbalances. In this model, an attempt has been made to assess the performance of the CEA's Delhi state monthly peak demand forecast using the performance parameters like root mean square error RMSE, mean absolute error MAE, and mean absolute percentage error MAP. The study specifically deploys the multiplicative seasonal autoregressive integrated moving average, that is the MS-ARIMA, or univariate time series technique for monthly peak demand forecasts.
Good morning, everybody. Our group will be presenting modeling and forecasting of monthly peak electricity demand using MS-ARIMA framework. The group consists of myself, Manas Joshi, Rituraj, Ajay Rawat, and Subir. Beginning with a quick introduction to electricity demand. Electricity demand exhibits significant seasonal and diurnal variations. The importance of electricity demand forecast lies in ever-existing demand-supply gap and strict regulation of unscheduled interchange. The forecasting horizon can be divided into 3 parts: long-term, used for policy decisions; medium-term, for planning yearly power plant maintenance as well as monthly peak and energy demand management; and short-term for day-to-day operations. Coming to the objective of our study, we intend to forecast monthly peak electricity demand using multiplicative seasonal autoregressive integrated moving average, that is MS-ARIMA framework, and it is known for its superior forecasting technique. Now, what relevance this study holds for power sector? It is a simplistic model useful for evolving short-term power purchase strategy, which will help the DISCOMs to reduce power purchase cost from the day-ahead market and avoid unscheduled interchange penalties. It can also help manage peak demand as well as energy demand. Now, the working papers on the topics include monthly peak demand of electricity in Northern India by Professor Sajal Ghosh, a critique on monthly peak demand of electricity in India by Professor Ghosh and Mr. S. Ralapalli, and these employ ARIMA framework for short-term electricity demand forecasting and Gauge framework for modeling electricity demand volatility. Now I hand over to Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Manas, and good morning to all of you. For our analysis and forecasting purposes, we have used the univariate time series. We have used the univariate time series model. Now, the first question which arises in our mind is what is univariate time series? Basically, as the term suggests, it consists of a single variable whose observation is recorded sequentially over equal time increments. Now, the next logical question somebody asks is, what are the advantages of using a univariate time series? Now, one of the most important advantages of using a univariate time series model is that you require only the historical data of the concerned variable to construct the model and then use that model for forecasting into the future. That is basically the advantages that lies in the simplicity of the model. Moreover, the relevant literature on the subject also suggests that it is one of the most superior models used for medium to short-term forecasting. Now, one of the models under univariate time series model is the ARIMA model, where the ARIMA stands for auto-regressive integrative moving average process. Now, any ARIMA process is basically defined through three parameters, that is P, T and Q, where P is the order of the AR process, Q is the order of the MA process, and V is the order of difference. Now, analogous to the previous model, there is a seasonal model of ARIMA, which is very defined by three parameters, that is P, D, Q, where P stands for the order of seasonal auto-regressive process, and so on and so forth. Now, if we combine these two models, we get a new model, which is MS-ARIMA model, which is multiplicative seasonal ARIMA model, takes into consideration both the trend and the seasonal factor into consideration. Now, we have chosen this model because it is the most relevant model, as the data series for the energy market generally exhibits both these components, that is the trend and the season phase. Now, coming back to the data which we have used for our presentation, it is basically the monthly unrestricted peak electricity demand for the state of Delhi, and the data span is from April 2007 to March 2012. The data is readily available on the Delhi SFDC site. The website address is given in the presentation and the handout. Now, I will request Ajay to explain the box and justice methodology which has been employed to identify the most suitable ARIMA model.
For the purpose of estimating and forecasting the time series data, we will use the box and Jennings method, which is basically a four-stage process. The first stage is identification, then estimation, then diagnostic and then forecasting. In the first stage, that is identification, we will first plot the data series, then we will examine the parallelogram, which is basically a lag plot of ACF and EACF, which is autocorrelation function, partial autocorrelation function. And then if we then we will use the unit group test to determine whether the series is stationary or non-stationary. If the series is non-stationary, we will use either by determining or either desynchronization or both, and then make the series stationary, and then we will create the model. And this is our data series. This is the peak demand of varies over the period from April 7 to Jan 12. This is the parallelogram. It shows a trend basically that this pattern is repeating after every 12 lag. That means there is a SMA 12 signature, and also shown is that the AR1 signature. Now we employed the unit test where the null hypothesis is that there is a unit group, and as the T statistic suggests that there is no unit group here, and as the data series is stationary. Now the stage 2 of estimation, in the parameters in the equation. Now this is the estimation. Then as you can see from the these stats that the MA3 and SMA3 variables are statistically significant. And now we will go for the diagnostic check, where we will basically see the residuals of the model and go for the white measures.
Residual like error.
As you can see from the residual series, at all the lags the series is significant, and hence we can conclude that the white noise is achieved. Now this is the residual actual fitted series plot, where we can see that the fitted series is very closely following the actual series. Now stage 4 is the forecasting, where we do the in-sample forecasting and out-of-sample forecasting for we have forecasted for the 6 months, basically from October 2010 to March 2011, and we have compared our model with the CA forecast, and as you can see from here that the mean actual percentage error for MS Arima forecast is 3.73, and for the CA forecast it is coming out to be 4.89%. For the outer sample forecasting, we have again checked that MAP is still lesser than the CA forecast, and MS Arima case it is 3.86%, and in the case of CA's forecast it is 7.26%. So hence MS Arima forecast outperforms the CA forecast. Again we can conclude that the MS Arima forecast performance is better than the CA forecast, which is based on time value, and then there are opportunities present in the legacy demand forecasting scenario to improve the performance of the forecast, which will basically result in the better criticism and the better load. Now we have also done the short-term demand forecasting for the hourly electricity demand in Delhi state, which will be taken care of with the research.
So I'm taking out this hourly electricity demand using Arima ECAS model. In this case, the data which we have considered is for the electricity demand for Delhi exclusive megawatt. And we have considered data span from 20 January 2030 to 10 February. And that's again taken from the LSRDC.1 data. We have again plotted like before it's hourly electricity demand for Delhi megawatt. We analyze our cologram. Here we have identified the signature CR1 signature in the partial position and SM24 signature by seeing this trend. And from the trend which it shows may not be confirmed. We need to first look for the stationarity of the data. If the data is stationary, then only we can rely on the previous program. So we go for the unit root test. Here the null hypothesis is assumed as there is no unit root. The probability value indicates that the null hypothesis is rejected. So there is a unit root and the data series is stationary. So we go for the estimation, and in this estimation, the 4 variables which we see here are found to be significant. The T stat value they are significant. So if you see the residual series at various lags, and we can see that at various lags the white noise is achieved. Again, we have plotted the regular and actual fitted series. In this case, the fitted series closely matches with the actual, and the actual part is shown in the blue line. In this case, the mean actual percentage error for the day 10 February, so across the day, throughout the day, is 2.07%. And for the out of sample, for the sample forecasting, and we did the out of sample forecasting for on the 11th of February for the whole day, and it came out to be 3.74%. Even after doing this, the error part, which we have seen before, may have volatility content. So we need to find out whether that is significant or not. So we go for the heterogeneity part. And also the coefficient of the asymmetric part, if you see, it is minus 0.1768. It indicates that the negative shocks in this asymmetric effect, negative shocks are more causing more volatility than the positive ones. And the last one is the persistence effect, which is not significant. Again, we plot the series after this Riemann inverse estimation. We find that the fitted series now is more close towards the actual series, and the blue lines indicate the residual part. That's it. And in this case, for the 10th February data, sample forecasting, mean sample forecasting, that we have whole day, came out to be 2.50% of that's the mean actual percentage. And for the out of sample forecasting, the mean actual percentage came out to be 3.90% on 11 February. So by this we conclude that there was similarity present, as well as there was varying volatility present in the hourly fixed demand. So these findings have implications on developing strategy for effectively managing fixed demand supply gaps. And so Riemann framework will be helpful for demand. Thank you.
Thank you, Rituraj, Manas, and Sudhi. Now the panel is open for discussion.
I just want to give one comment on when you forecast hourly.
At 10 beta.
Yeah, like my comment would be like when you go for hourly demand, like because you have now huge data, probably you can use like Fourier transform method.
Yeah, there are many more. There are many more. Neural network, Fouriers, then many more models are available.
Yeah.
But to answer your question honestly, you know, if you look at the global level studies where the models has been compared on various horizons, so they are generally compared 4-5 models, and it generally shows why we are giving that ARIMA model so much emphasis, because as I told, there is a shortage of, shorter duration of the course, and it has been empirically proven that ARIMA forecasting, among all other complex models, it is one of the better forecasting models. So, well, the time is a problem, as I told, it is 2.5 months course.
Yeah.
So if you introduce the Fourier analysis, there are many more models we cannot touch. So that's why we have to be selective. Well, the horizon is open, one can easily learn those models. But since it is proven that ARIMA model is one of the good forecasting model, so we restricted on that issue. But as you told that there are many more models which one can apply.
And regarding performance testing, like even I used to do like rely on point forecast, like, but then recently we have seen many papers, they have tested their performance based on distribution of the forecast, like probability integral transform. Basically inverse of CDF is uniform distribution. So you can use that. Probably you will have like more robust.
Yeah, one thing I agree that Riemann is definitely which is being used globally for this load forecasting as well as for the price forecasting. So my question is for this case study, what are the input variables you have taken? Is it only the demand supply ratio or the weather parameters and other?
No, we have only taken basically we have done the ARIMA forecasting of the univariate series.
So
it is a single variable.
Nothing there.
Yeah.
See, this is one of the biggest issue we have today in the Indian market, that there are a lot of influencing factors. So we need to address those influencing factors within this model.
If I answer your question, the one of the benefit of this univariate model is to avoid those issues. Say for example, when you are dealing with the hourly data, whatever you are trying to say that certain variables will influence that demand, which is the common perception is there. Add that the multivariate regression model or many other model which is dealing with this. But generally, if you find that the short-term electricity demand is generally based on the weather forecast, with the weather parameters, and there is also a linear relationship with the weather and the demand. It is the reading, and then it takes maybe 1 hour to realize that the temperature is cold, so you can switch off the AC. So that kind of model, one the benefit of this type of model is that, as we say, there is a univariate model. The benefit is that we don't need any other explanatory variable. Whatever the effect the effect leaves a footprint on the data. We don't know, we don't want to know what are those effects. But there is an imprint of the data. So the objective of this entire modeling procedure is to identify the patterns. And as it shows in any high frequency data, those so-called explanatory variables, say in this case your weather parameters, basically the power. Again, the forecast of weather, hourly basis forecast, in India is, you know, that is very difficult to do and robust forecast. On the other hand, there is a way out, and that is the beauty of this model, where you don't need any kind of other variables. The variable itself is a self-propagating process where all the past informations are already, you know, embedded into the data. The objective is this model is to identify those patterns through that, as I told, that ARR-MA process with the seasonal part, and then basically make a dynamic forecast, which generally experimentally shows that it is one of the superior forecasting model, as it is reflected by the very low MAP, mean absolute percentage. So that is another different kind of modeling tactics, which is the univariate modeling tactics, and which is widely used across the world. Not only power sector, in stock market, in any, well, there are more complex form of that, but univariate model, that is the benefit of the univariate model, where you don't need any other variable, the idea is itself.
What I have seen is there are utilities who are using certain tools like SAS and I know. So the problem what I see is the models. At times there are certain political factors. You may have elections in some place.
Yeah.
So there is no customization available in these tools.
To answer this question, this is the next stage. Well, to answer exactly this question, this is the next stage of that model. There are certain days, we call it, day of the week effect or holiday effect. That can easily be taken care of by introducing dummy variables. So that, well, they have not incorporated, but that can be easily.
See, I just had one suggestion. We've been working on these models. So what we see is one model may not be sufficient for forecasting. You need to develop models, and out of those multiple models, you need to come up with the expert model. You may have ANN also combined with this. So that takes care of all these factors. Thanks, sir.
In the model he was
That R9 model. Yeah, that is R9.
Yeah, I am Rajesh Bansal. I am from BSCS Power Distribution Company, focused from Delhi. So definitely, your presentation is very interesting. I just want to give you two small inputs, and rather, I want to get associated with other business. The first input is just a small information. The data SLDC data, based on the information what they collect from their data, but it is collected after 2 months. So make sure you will have 2 series of data. Like you are taking the February data, but you will have an April data, which is the actual final data. So my suggestion is, since we are doing the project, just collect that data. So let me admit, I am not an expert of analytics and such type of theories, but as an engineer, as a buyer, looking at energy management in my company as a vice president, I have to use this data. So I will not go into formulas and methods, but I am doing the practical use. You as an analyst make a report which is for a user, and I am talking from a user perspective. So SLDC, I give you a small. And second is, I suggest we make a forecast for the March month. See, we as a user, I can tell you by my experience, March month is a very typical month. As a Hindu, when the Holi, the festival of Holi is decided, the winter is over and summer is start, and so the pattern also change. You can easily correlate. February month is more stable month. January to December month, they are more stable months. It's easy to forecast a daily basis. But March is a typical month. April is a typical month. You try with it. Maybe you can share with us. We can give you the exact data what is happening. And let's come out with the model where we can definitely use the things. And as Mr. Soni has said, demand forecasting based on history is one thing. But I tell you, increase in tariff, energy efficiency is a very, very important factor which can really give you the demand. Anyhow, we are not expecting any tariff in March or March in this company. You can give a share.
No, I guess that's the point. The thing is, this is a purely very short-term model. So what you're saying is also relevant in the sense that you're doing a medium term or daily data, where the price is another very less, I think you also mentioning. Those need to be having a structural model. So that's like a medium term model. So obviously, you need not have only unique model. You can have multiple family of models depending on what is your immediate requirement. So this particular, they have obviously two models. One is a long-term model and the short-term model. But both of them are doing univariate. I would possibly look at First model, which is more like a structuralist model, that have all the multivariate model and all, which where your facility gets taken care of, and the short-term model, which is really a weekly basis, where both the things, depending on your kind of long-term planning versus short-term daily buying of the power, both can be used. So your suggestion about getting the data and they can do it in a live way, that is even better. Thank you for that, and hopefully that will be adding to their understanding and using analytics.
Okay, maybe if you can, on your side, I can just add one line to that. The purpose of forecasting, there has to be a purpose. If I forecast at 11 o'clock there will be sun, maybe 364 days after 365 days I will be correct. But that one day, if I am not able to forecast, the basic purpose of forecasting is also. So we are more particular about when we really deviate from the normal. And these are the factors which deviate. Now, I am always ready as a distribution company vice president, I am always ready to supply the maximum. My fear is whenever there is a major deviation. So we are more worried about the major deviation rather than, okay, our data is matching to the forecast for 99% of the time. The point is not the 99%, the point is that 1% where we get data.
That's a very good point.
We are working for that 1%.
If you allow me to answer that question, now out of sample forecasting, there is always a danger of large deviation because we are not God, number one. So anything which can happen exogenously, which has the information is not in the data set. Say for example, something had happened, grid collapse, say for example. Suddenly there is a grid collapse and that information was not there in the previous data set. So of course, the forecast on that particular day of grid collapse, you will find that there is a huge deviation between the actual and the projected thing. But across the world, across the globe, nobody is taken care of or nobody predict actually what will happen tomorrow. If it matches, it good, but at the same time one should be accept that there might be a deviation because what will happen in the future, no model in the world can actually simulate the future. What this model does basically, it basically try to simulate that if the business as usual situation prevails, what would be the tomorrow's situation. But in tomorrow, in the morning, if something happened all on a sudden, then of course, no model in the world can tackle that kind of issue.
But you will actually rather Discom, I cannot say hands up.
No sir, it is not that case, it is not that case. But as you told, if I address this, say for example, you told that March is a very volatile month in terms of demand. But as I told, this model they have not shown, but there are ways and means to handle those kind of the holiday effect or that holy effect as you told. There are ways and means through which one can capture this thing. This model they have not incorporated, but as Alok suggested, that is a development of that model is called RMAX model, where it can be taken care of.
Now, I think here another point is that which possibly, I don't know, modelists still have thought about it or not, that the Holi in a way is also possibly a religious festival, but also is a seasonal change effect.
Well,
which
that
February doesn't have, March has. And like this month, you know, Holi is towards the end of the month. And you see that weather pattern seems to shift more or less following Hindu kind of phenomenon rather than the English calendar.
So the logic is that we need to select the data scan based on the data horizon.
Incorporating the data.
The data horizon should be selected in that.
So you have given a solution.
There is a user of the report.
When you say the detailed market simulation, this modeling has to go along with the detailed market simulation to see what is the impact of actual scenarios. That is how your model actually can have a corrective factor built in the.
No, of course, there's no doubt.
It has to go together with the market simulation. So you may not be 100% accurate, but at least you will be able to predict what is going to happen tomorrow.
I am just running to that day. I don't know your name, sorry. Just typically univariate modeling is pretty dangerous. I'll share my experience with you. I use monthly data or daily data sometimes to predict sales data. So basically, then I use just one variable to predict next day or next month variable. It's pretty tedious and sometimes pretty off the mark. I would say one time when I predicted using one variable that our active base would be 10 lakhs above But I was wrong because in that month, active base was lesser than assume active base is just a base, right? So actually, in actual scenario, active base was lesser than 10 lakhs than I forecasted. I would definitely don't go with this.
Well, to answer your question again, that is your personal experience, but the statistics shows, if you see the UV value, both in sample and out of sample. Now this out of sample is for the future. Now here, as you can see, that this out of sample is basically they wait for the day to come and then compare it, their forecasted value with the actual. And as you can see that the statistics says that the error for the last 7 days is around 2%. So, well, I am not justifying anything. That is your experience. It might happen. But what I can say that this model so far the data shows that it was.
There is one more thing. This variable sometimes the value of this any statistic you take, for example, the variable in this case, these are influenced by a couple of things. Not just in my case, it was sales. And sales was not just governed by historical sales, historical consumption, but also by the target given to sales guys. So the inherent problem is not the sales. Inherent problem also is one of the major factors, that is target achieved by sales guys. So how you are going to?
I think Jogesh is the right person to answer this.
We have not done sales forecasting, but I do have a perspective on that. So it's a question of
The background, when he corrected it, but the point is that he included other variables. But let me accept it. Inclusion of new variables and getting those variables is a bit tedious. So I accept, it's pretty easy. Even 2-3% error is good enough. As a statistician, I would accept that 2-3% error is good enough. But if you have the data, I would suggest if you have extra variable, please use it. If it's not, then it's good model. Otherwise, if you have the luxury to use other variables, please use that. Otherwise, sometimes it's pretty off the mark. And his comment that 1% and looking for 1% is absolutely right. I absolutely agree with them. Just 1%, when the management needs 1% and you are off the mark, you are not.
and then you just streamline it down. So that is, and then on top of that, again, you raise some very points that you have to just introduce some information for the future as well. That, okay, in future, this is my base forecast, and then these are some events that I'm expecting. Is there some historical precedence with that? Then I can input some additional numbers from my side, or if it's not, then I have to just do some jugglery. That what is that? If there's an information that I foresee, what can I do to just change my numbers for that particular period? And that's where the combination of art and science comes to the picture. My 2 points were there on how do you see what are the technical difficulties, or I'm not expecting an answer. What are the technical difficulty you see when you just add up your daily forecast and if this can match with your monthly forecast? That is a crucial gap that I see, and I have seen this from my experience of this is very similar to call center forecasting, where you are trying to forecast or predict. Where you are dealing with a capacity challenge, capacity management for the call center, where you are dealing with the yearly challenge of what is I need 3,000 people for my call center versus what demand, how many people will I need for the next half an hour, because that's where that 1% comes into the picture. If I have launched new credit card and suddenly people have started calling up and I don't have people for that particular period, that's where it gets discussed most frequently, and that's the escalation point. That's an exception. So if you can match up these two, I believe that you can look at the call center forecasting and capacity planning possibility, because the scenario is similar, where this is perishable demand. If demand is there, you don't have capacity to match that, it's gone. You cannot store. And then if you have excess capacity and the demand is not there, then again it's a capacity under utilization. One. And the first part was, can you roll up your daily forecast and match up to the monthly forecast? I'm not expecting the answer, but have you thought about that?
Let me just add that 1% because that's now become a catchword. Daily CMS said this year that demand will go to 6,000. Good enough. Now we cannot build an infrastructure of 6,000. That action is already taken. Now the key thing is, we have to arrange the power for that 6,000. But what I expect, the demand forecasting team can say, which date, which time that 6,000 will come. If I don't know, then it is as good as I'm saying. This is not, it is not possible exactly, precisely, but maybe a range. Okay, they can't say it will be on 24th of July, but maybe between 7 to, or say 17th to 30th July, it is possible. This is the duration in evening also possible. Because you cannot, okay, even if you know, but if you don't have the complete information, so let me tell you one thing. I have nothing to say bad about the thing. It's very good what I have seen. So I have all the praise for the students. What I am saying is as an input, as a user. Gentlemen, please remember, I am not analytics, but you are making a report, and unless until the user use your report, then only there is an advantage, otherwise no report is an advantage. And here I want to add one more thing. In analytics, I don't do financial analytics or something like that, but I do meter data analytics. One thing always remember, what data you want and how the data is generated, the quality of data. These are the two important inputs. Then the tool will come. So always remember what data you want and what quality of data you have. So for example, weather is important for energy. There are n number of sites, there are n number of companies who provide weather. It maybe it is a costlier data. Whether in final India will play or not, that will decide on that instant what will be the power demand. And there are sites which can predict what are the chances that India will do. So we have to do that.
I want to finish this on a lighter note. First, I want to introduce myself. I was a student of Dr. Bose. And he taught us this paper. And for the first 1 week, the entire batch repeated this topic only, the accuracy. And in the end, it emerged that it is a guiding principle. Whatever output we get from analytics, it is a guiding principle for making policies. It cannot be relied 100%. And the last one which I want to tell is the first analytics in Indian history was Muni Narad. एक इतिहास है ये। नारद जी ब्रह्मा के पुत्र हुआ करते थे और नारद जी को ये आशीर्वाद थी कि वो जो बोलेंगे वो 100% सही हो जाएंगे। जो बोलते थे सो होता था। इसका परिणाम ये हुआ कि नारद जी अपनी आदत से लाचार थे। वो किसी को देखते थे बोलते थे तुम्हारा तो 4 दिन के बाद मृत्यु होने वाली है और वो मर जाता था। किसी का बोलते थे तुम्हारा बिजनेस तो बैठने वाला है, तुम बर्बाद होने वाले हो। It created a chaos in the entire universe. और अंत में ब्रह्मा जी को नारद जी को यह श्राप देना पड़ा कि आज के बाद आप जो भी बोलोगे उसकी 75% ही सही होगी। तो ये नेचर में इनबिल्ट है कि हम जो भी प्रेडिक्ट करेंगे उसका 75% ही सही होगा। That's all. Very good. Thank you.
First of all, I wanted to thank MPI for having invited me here. Not only because there's a good set of people having a discussion also, but also because I worked with Mr. Rajesh Bansal and Sony here. They were probably my first set of bosses in BSc in the first job. Thanks for that. One thing I wanted to, and because they are my bosses in the history, I have to kind of support them on something. So one thing, let me say on 1%, is the issue is around value of at risk, right? That 1% can throw off all your investment capital expenditure plan, all your system planning, the way you behave with politicians, all kinds of stuff, right? And so I understand that predicting, that 1% is tough, but it is important to factor that in after the event has happened. So that's where I kind of disagree with Yogesh a bit. One of the things we are facing, and we do energy modeling across the world, is the ripple effect of Fukushima, right? Now when Fukushima happens, Germany switches off a number of its older reactors and stops building nuclear. China does something else. Japan becomes the biggest LNG exporter in the world, right? And US becomes a LNG exporter itself rather than net importer. So what does that kind of an event has on the future data prediction?